What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Rocket Vlogs. My name is Braden Carlson, and today we are working on my high-performance test bed rocket. Specifically today, we're going to be diving in a little bit about how to set up a cable cutter recovery system using these. These are the Piranha cable cutters from tinderrocketry.com. Very nice product. They make everything simple and nice. We'll dive into that a little bit later. If you're not familiar with this rocket and what's going on, this rocket is a tube fin test bed for my N1000 minimum diameter project with Great Western Buildings called the Bobs. This rocket will just be flying on a K motor. We're using it to test the recovery setup. You can see there's a big hole in the side of it because we've got this full custom 3D printed sled with camera on board and everything. The ultimate reason for this rocket's existence is to make sure that I have the recovery system set up how I want. We get the tube fin rocket to fly nice and low so I can watch the whole sequence unfold and make sure that it is going to work the way I wanted, because all of the recovery gear is going in the nose cone, both the main and the drogue parachute. That's where the cable cutter is going to come in. If you're unfamiliar with what's going on here, you can check out my minimum diameter 3-inch rocket project, my last JB Weld project, and it goes into a little bit more in depth about what these charge cannons are and how it works. Using a similar setup, Kip Dalgerdis flew his rocket to 293,000 feet and used black powder charges, no CO2. So we're going to go with what we know works from other people's experience to minimize our chances of running into issues. While I would love to dive straight into the cable cutter setup, I do still have some things that I need to finish working on with this rocket. You may notice that it's been cut in half since the last time you saw it, unless you're a Patreon member. We don't need to talk about that. That's a story for another day. What we do need to do, however, is trim down these pieces of all thread, which is going to be first on the to-do list for today. And we got to get our shock cord in, the tip of the nose cone removed so I can put an eye bolt up in there. And yeah, then I'll show you guys how I'm going to set everything up, how I'm going to pack everything, and maybe we'll get a ground test in this video. We'll see. All right, folks, we're working on rocket stuff in the living room on the coffee table because it's like 110 degrees in my garage and there's no actual adults in this house to tell me I can't. So before you is all the recovery gear for this rocket, and the same setup will be in the N1000 project. As you can see, the main parachute, which is right here, this is a 50-inch Top Flight thin mill. I think I'm going to go to a bigger chute with the actual N1000, so this is going to be just a little bit different, which sort of, yes, if you want to get technical, defeats the whole purpose, but really what we're focusing on here is the cable cutter system. Besides, going from a 50-inch to a 72 thin mill does not change that much packing volume, so it'll be pretty similar. And despite how small it does look, if you've ever seen big rockets, this nose cone feels like a Caesar's Palace ballroom to me compared to the 3-inch rocket that I did not that long ago. There's plenty of room for packing. So we've got all the shock cord, we've got the drogue parachute and the main parachute all in the same compartment, right? So at apogee, our ejection charges are gonna fire and separate the nose, and then all of this will be exposed. So obviously the drogue parachute is going to open, that's fine, but we want to prevent the main parachute from opening, and that is where the cable cutter comes in. There's a nice close-up on the Beat coffee table for you. This thing's been in my family for probably longer than I have, so it's got some nice patina and wear and tear. Anyway, this is the Piranha. There's actually 2 of them in here from tinderrocketry.com. It's a pretty straightforward cable cutting setup, although it is different to set up than a traditional dual deploy ejection charge. So I'm gonna go through it and show you guys how you do it and how you set it up for redundancy. You can see that there's 2 of them. All right, so there are instructions that are detailed on the Tinder Rocketry website. So I'd say go ahead and use those. I'm following them to a T for this setup, but the first thing you do is you pack this screw with the included lubricant. And it says, don't be stingy. So we're gonna make sure we've got a good amount in there. It's a little runnier, I think, than usual because it's been in a warm space, but it's all right, probably. That's packed full of goo. We're gonna take our E-match, remove the plastic covering, then we're gonna take one of these cute little O-rings and we're gonna run it all the way up the E-match to the match head. This is a really long one, so this is more of a pain than it really needs to be, but here we are. There you go. Hopefully that's focusing okay and you can kind of see what's going on. I'm pretty far from the camera. We just have the O-ring right there up against the soldered end of the E-match head. Then what we're gonna do is feed it through our lubed up cap. We're not gonna pull it all the way through just yet. The instructions included really stress that you want to have everything sealed up very nicely on the cap side. To do that, they have a few different recommendations, but one is this included putty. So that's what I'm going to go with here. The instructions show it cutting this guy into quarters and rolling it out like so. And we're gonna do one around the bottom of the O-ring. And one around the top of the O-ring. And then they just recommend rolling the whole ensemble between your fingers. I've got it a little closer to the match head than they do in the instructions, but I don't really think that's gonna be an issue. So the other options for achieving this sealing process are like 5 to 15 minute epoxy or a hot glue gun. But this is sort of the best option for on the fly, say you have it at the launch site. And let's see how we're fitting there. That looks like it'll do. Like I said, they really stress making sure that this whole assembly is very well sealed. So I'm just doing my best to adhere to that. Next up, we're going to lubricate the inside of the cutter body using pretty much the same process as we did with the screw. We just want everything nice and slippery in there. And you want to take a second there, you can't see it, but there's an O-ring down there seated at the bottom. They recommend using the included Allen wrench to make sure that that's properly seated. I already did that off camera, sorry. Okay, now we have this tiny little vial of what I'm going to call 4F black sugar for the baking channel. You fill up this cap just like that. Again, I don't know how well that's focusing. You just fill it up, and it, please go check out the instructions from Tinder. They make it very clear what's going on here. But the nice thing about this setup is, compared to a traditional ejection charge, it uses so little black powder. Now our final step, put our piston guy in there. And in all the pictures on their website, they have 2 zip ties in them. So we're just gonna do that because that's how it is on their website. So that's how we're gonna do it. And these are the smaller zip ties that they include with the whole kit. So now we're going to take our sealed ensemble here. And there you go. Now I know that might seem a little confusing. I told you that we are running 2 of them, but if you're running 2, if you're gonna run 2, you just add your second one right there on the same zip ties. That way, if your first one fires and doesn't break the zip ties, your second one is your backup plan. If the first one does, then the second one's just along for the ride. Now, this is my one gripe with this setup, is that these zip ties are tiny, but you can kind of remedy that solution by just adding more zip ties. I wish that this was set up to cut full size zip ties, because then you're just running one. I don't know if they run two just for the sake of added resistance to it just breaking on its own mid-fall or what, but if they could do regular size zip ties, then you could just take any zip ties you get at the hardware store and any length and problem solved. But for now, we'll just add a couple zip ties. Tighten it from both ends. And that's how you set up the cable cutter. So now let's pack the rocket up. I'll show you how it all goes together. Okay, we're gonna move this guy for a moment. So here you go. We got our little 12-inch top flight recovery drogue here. The drogue chute, pretty unnecessary for the tube fin rocket, if I'm being honest. That thing would float down just fine with no drogue. But the end rocket, I like the idea of having a drogue so that it can't streamline if we tried to fly it drogueless. So we're packing it as close to how the end rocket will be packed, because after all, this is made to test that. So that's how our drogue chute's gonna get packed. Let's see if that wants to stay. Then what I'm gonna do, take a few feet of our Kevlar shock cord, and we're gonna make it into a soft break. We're gonna take a piece of electrical tape, tape that guy up. This guy goes here, as you might suspect. Now, here's where things differ a little bit from your standard dual deploy setup, and this is actually how Wildman recommends doing your head-end deployment setups. The main parachute is entirely separate from the shock cord and the whole ensemble here. It and its chute protector have its own quick link, and they're gonna go right there. Obviously, we want the parachute to stay relatively put. The way I like to do that with stuff like this, and this is what I do with my charges that go in the tips of rocket nose cones as well. I'll give it a little bit of slack on the E-match wire and then tie a knot on my eye bolt. That way, if this somehow does get loose and we get a good jolt on this guy, it's gonna be on the eye bolt and not to my electronics inside. And then we're just gonna feed our E-match wire in there. Now, I just want to make sure that the E-match wire is safe from these guys, because like I said, those are our charge cannons. Spread it out so you get a little bit better view of what's going on here. Now, obviously, this is just the way that I'm doing it. If you want your main parachute to be on the shock cord still, you can do that and leave a lot of slack for your E-match to your cable cutter. But that just seems like the potential for problems to me. So just putting it directly to the top of the electronics bay makes the most sense in my head. Your mileage may vary, obviously. Okay. So, drogue's gonna go in. Soft brake's gonna go in, way up in there. And this is going to be lovely, honestly, because, man, the 3-inch was a little bit tedious for this whole packing procedure. But, man, look at that. So easy with the 4-inch. And there you go. That's how the deployment system is gonna work for this guy. So we'll have our apogee charge, pop, pulls this all apart, put this guy over here. Drogue comes out, cool, breaks the soft brake. And then we tumble till the main charge on our cable cutter fires, breaks these zip ties, and we're ready to go. So I think all we have left to do here is take this off and go ground test our cable cutter so you guys can see how it works. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of Rocket Vlogs. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you look closely at that footage, I'll run it back over top of me right now. You'll see the black mark appear on the Nomex. All the gases are supposed to be contained within the cable cutter device itself, so that shouldn't be an issue. I think there's a chance that I overcooked it on the black powder a little bit, but they are not kidding when they say you need to have that and sealed up really well. If you look real closely, you can actually see the little O-ring get pushed through the tiny hole and out the back. So I'm not sure if it's just that the black sugar that I was using was so fine, or maybe I got a little bit too much of it in there, or it just wasn't quite sealed up enough and I need a lot more grease and clay. No matter what, I've got some ground testing that I still need to do. Plus, I still need to do a full ground test of the apogee charges as well. And I still need to put a motor mount assembly in this rocket and glue the coupler and everything. So I have some stuff to do, but I just wanted to bring you guys this video on the cable cutter setup, at least the general idea of it, right? Maybe not so much the proper execution, but I've had a lot of people asking how I'm planning to do that, so I figured I would lay it all out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to extend a special thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members, as usual, whose names are rolling across the screen right now. If you want behind the scenes pictures and early access to videos, podcasts, and everything that I got going on, you can join at patreon.com/rocketvlogs or press the join button underneath the video. Don't forget to press the like button, it helps me out a lot. And if you aren't subscribed, please press the subscribe button, it's free. Turn the little notification bell on as well. You'll get all the info and yada, yada, yada. You know, all the YouTube stuff. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Braden. You just watched a Rocket Vlogs video, and I'll see you next time.